We are just a few days away from the Eagles season opener in Sao Paulo. Rube, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? You all packed?
All packed, ready to go. Leaving for the airport this afternoon. We're recording this on Tuesday morning. I'm flying out Tuesday night. Should be fun.
You looking forward to it?
I am, yeah. Look, there are certainly some logistics to get over, but the Eagles have done it too. It is what it is. I'm looking forward to the trip.
Good.
Yeah. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan, Reuben Frank, and Dave Zangaro. We're going to talk a bunch about the trip to Brazil, not just for me, but for the Eagles as well. They're the ones that matter. We also want to talk about a big role for a rookie that got revealed this week. We have our before the year predictions to go over, and then we have some questions at the end of the pod. But Rube, let's start with Brazil because it is the biggest topic, and obviously there's a bunch of football stuff to talk about too. But the news really is that Eagles are going to Brazil.
Yeah, and we got some time with Assistant General Manager John Ferrari on Monday. It was Monday. Answered a bunch of questions and kind of gave us an idea of the extent of planning that's gone into this and just how they've I was pretty impressed. I mean, every single thing that we came up with, he had an answer for. So we'll go through some of the things that they've done to plan to prepare for moving the whole franchise to South America for a couple of days.
Yeah, it's a lot. And they have certain other events they can kind of lean on, but this is a different animal. This is the first NFL game ever played in South America. So with that, you kind of have to blaze your own trail a little bit, and they've been able to do that.
Yeah, they sent a team down in April representing each department. The groundskeeper went down, the nutritionist, the traveling secretary, all those people went down for a couple of days in April and just kind of got the lay of the land. So they've been there and they know what to expect, and it's still going to be it's going to be interesting. The logistics are pretty wild.
Yeah. Before we get into what John Ferrari said, let's kind of go through the schedule of this week. So we're recording this on Tuesday morning. The Eagles will practice this afternoon in South Philadelphia, and then they'll sleep home tonight. They'll sleep back in Philly tonight. Tomorrow, on Wednesday, they'll fly to Brazil, and the idea is that they're basically going to stay awake all day and go to sleep in Brazil on Wednesday night. That way, on Thursday morning, they wake up and they kind of hit the ground running. There's only a 1 hour time difference from East Coast time in the States to the time in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is an hour ahead. So pretty negligible. So they're just going to kind of wake up on Thursday, have their normal before the game day, and then hopefully be ready to go Friday night.
Yeah, they're going to try to make it as close to a normal road trip as possible. You can't make it a normal road trip because there's no 10-hour normal road trips. But once they get off the plane, they're going to have to go through customs like normal people, wait in line. They can be a long line. But once they do that, for Wednesday, Thursday, for Friday, I don't know how you keep an entire football team from going to sleep on a 10-hour flight. We were talking about like Dom's going to just go up and down the aisle kicking guys. Hey, wake up, wake up. But
I've already talked to a few players who are like, I don't know if I'll be able to stay away.
Yeah. But the one benefit that makes this a little easier is, like you mentioned, the time difference is like negligible. So you can kind of, when you go to London, it's a shorter flight, half the length, but the time difference, what is it, 4 hours, I guess? It depends what time of year it is, but generally 4 hours. And that changes a lot. So if you can stay in the same, you're not losing a night, you're not losing a day. I was really interested in how they kind of created an extra day, and they had the luxury since it's the first game they started. Normally, if you have a Monday night game, then, Tuesday becomes your Monday, Wednesday becomes your Tuesday, all that, you move everything a day, but they just added a day. They basically started their week a day early. So travel wasn't cutting into their prep. So I thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, that becomes basically the extra day is just the travel.
Right.
Which it really is almost a full day. It's a long trip.
Yeah.
About 9.5 hours from Philly to Sao Paulo direct.
And they're flying an American Airlines 766, which is a bigger plane than they normally take. So they're going to have a lot of leg room. They're going to have a lot of room to. I mean, you're going to have to walk around. It's a 159-foot aircraft. Normally seats about 215 people. I'm not sure exactly. We didn't ask them how big their traveling party is. I assume it's about, gosh, I don't know, 120, maybe something like that. But they'll have a lot of comfort. They're not gonna be guys crammed into middle seats. So they're going to do everything they can to make it a comfortable trip.
A personal travel update. I've been monitoring this. Right now, I have an aisle seat, and there's no one next to me.
Oh man, see, but you can't get your hopes up.
I know I'm not getting my hopes up yet, but it's on my radar. I'm going to keep checking it throughout the day.
How many times are you sitting there and there's an empty seat next to you, and they're like, "We're going to close the door in 5 minutes."
Oh, it's going to be the last person on the flight.
And that one person comes in, and like everyone who's got an empty seat next to him is like, "Looking, please don't sit here. Please don't sit here," because that's heaven. When we came back from London, I got upgraded into business class on Virgin Atlantic and had an aisle to myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's
not bad.
That was heavenly.
Yeah, still there.
Right in my Wendell Smallwood story on the plane.
We'll see. There's a bunch of middle seats open.
Okay.
So I've got a shot at this.
And how far back are you?
I am in row 21.
I don't know if you want to give that out for a competitive advantage. I don't know if you want to give out your seat, but
row 21. So okay. Looking good.
But that's just
we'll see.
That's to Miami. That's from Miami to
it's a long flight. I don't care about the flight to Miami.
Which normally is a pretty, that's a good 2.5 hour flight.
Yeah, it's going to feel like nothing.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into a little bit of what Ferrari said about this trip. We'll just kind of throw this back and forth. Give me one thing that kind of stuck out to you.
Yeah, and there was a lot of interesting stuff. I think it was the first thing we asked him was he said it's. I know AJ mentioned that they're not supposed to leave their rooms, or he might have just said, "I'm not going to leave my room." But Ferrari said there's no edict that guys can't leave their rooms. They gave them information about the area and about what's safe and what's probably not a good idea. And he said that's something they do whenever there's an extended trip. If it's the Super Bowl and they're there for a week in Jacksonville or Minneapolis or Phoenix, he said even joint practices, because they were up in Foxborough for a few days. Wherever they go, they share best practices, and he said there's no edict that they can't leave their rooms. He said it's safe to walk around and just be smart about it. He said the quote was, "There's nothing prohibiting them from leaving their room." So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and AJ said that it was a meeting of do's and don'ts, and Ferrari was a little sensitive about that. He said there was a meeting of everything, and not just what they can and can't do, but it was a meeting of the travel plan and everything they're going to do while they're down there, the schedule. So it seems like it's a typical meeting they have, but obviously this is an atypical type of trip.
Right.
I will go with one that I've been asked probably about more than anything. It's the colors, jersey colors, and can the fans wear the colors? So the Eagles are wearing black and white for this game. It's kind of a tip of the cap to the Corinthians who play in that arena, in that stadium, and they wear black and white. So the Eagles thought it would be a cool nod to wear the home team colors. They have that available to them with the black helmets this year, so they thought that would be cool. The news for fans: if you're going to Brazil, John Ferrari says feel safe wearing green. It's not it's there are reports that it was like a gang type thing. It's not. It's really just about the rival team of the Corinthians wears green, and typically you don't wear green in that stadium, but everyone kind of understands the situation is different when you have two American football teams playing and their primary color is green for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another kind of myth that he dispelled. Although you've kind of made that clear. I mean, I think the NFL talked about that on the call you guys had.
Yeah, it's been something that it's kind of taken a life of its own. And look, I understand. Like if you're going to this game and you're worried about, can I wear my Jalen Hurts jersey? Yeah, you can.
One thing I was really impressed with the level of I guess preparation. He was asked about serious injuries, and it's something you don't want to think about, but it's football. It's a violent game. And the medical team visited the nearby hospital right near the stadium. He said it's brand new, state of the art. He said it's going to be a combination of team doctors, league doctors, and local Brazilian doctors, Brazilian medical authorities, who would be in charge of anything that happens. The hospital's nearby. He said if sometimes when a player suffers a concussion or other injuries on a road trip, they stay back, can't travel initially. He said somebody with the Eagles medical team or training staff would stay back in Brazil with them until they're ready to fly back. So they've got the hospital scouted out. They're really happy with the care, the level of care that any player would get if they, God forbid, have to go to the hospital. That was pretty reassuring.
Yeah, and it also gives you a good idea of the scope of this whole process.
Yeah.
It's like there are a lot of elements that I hadn't honestly even thought that much about.
Yeah.
I will the wildfires.
Yeah.
There are wildfires in Brazil right now. As of when we spoke to John Ferrari, it hasn't been an issue. The air quality has been okay as far as they know. Now he did say like the league talks about contingency plans and all that kind of stuff, but as of right now, it looks fine. It looks like they're gonna be able to play this game.
I remember being in LA. I don't even know if it was the Carson year or the next year when they had the wildfires out there. And we could smell the smoke like driving in the stadium, but it was far away. But there was questions about the air quality back then. John Ferrari was asked about, and I was impressed with the question. Yellow fever is apparently the mosquitoes. Yellow fever is a big problem down there. And he had the answer ready. He said it's not really a problem in urban areas. It's really an issue in the more rural areas, farmlands, and outside the big cities. He said they've done a lot of work on the medical side of yellow fever. The team hasn't been vaccinated. If somebody's going to visit Brazil and they're going to be there a long time, or they're going to be outside the major cities, it's recommended that you get vaccinated for yellow fever.
If you're going to the Amazon.
Yeah.
When I went to the Amazon, I have a yellow fever.
But if you're going to the Hilton, it's and he even said there's like netting in some of the outdoor areas just to be careful. But he said we're not that concerned about it. When you look at what our schedule is going to be like, how long we're going to be there, we're not concerned about it. So I was impressed that he even was ready for that question.
Yeah, and it's another one of those scope things. It's like, wow, they're thinking about all these elements. Food is a big deal for a football team. They're going to have a lot of meals in Brazil. So he mentioned that their performance nutrition coordinator has been in contact with the hotel they're staying at,
and she was down there in April. Steph Coppola.
Yeah, so that they're planning all that out. Nutrition's a big part of what they do here at the NovaCare complex, and I think typically when you travel to a road city in the States, it's a little easier to figure out what you're going to get and what you're going to serve. But they've actually been working with the chefs and cooks at their hotel in Brazil to make sure that everything is kind of exactly what they want.
Yeah, they're not going down there to sample Brazilian cuisine. They want to stay on the same, have everything as close to. So if whatever they have here, they're going to have there.
Well, I mean, they could have some Brazilian cuisine as long as the ingredients are up to.
Yeah, as long as it fits into. I mean, you don't want anything spicy before football. It's just obvious things. John talked about kind of contingencies for the long flight. Pretty basic stuff. Normally you have one meal on the flight. They've got two. You try, like you mentioned, try to keep them awake.
You ever have a good meal on a flight?
Yes, on the way back from London, that Virgin Atlantic business class. Yeah, we had grilled salmon and vegetables, and it was the best meal I had in London. Was on the flight home. Actually, it was really.
Sometimes international flights are the food's pretty good.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe it actually. But hydration. Get the guys off their feet a few times on the flight. You don't want to be sitting there for 10 hours without moving. So. I don't know if they're going to do like yoga on the plane or just stretching, but I mean, I do that. If I'm on a long flight, I always get up, and that's why I like to be in an aisle seat so I can stretch my legs a couple times and definitely drink a lot of water and stay hydrated. He mentioned IVs. I mean, they measure guys' hydration levels, and it's easy to get dehydrated what do they say? That's why like you get drunk easier when you're flying, like because the liquor is, I read about this and it was explained, and I can't explain it, but you get dehydrated faster at the altitude, I guess, or the something to do with the air in the plane. So liquor is going to hit you harder just because you're more dehydrated. So they're going to have guys on IVs and drinking a lot of water and just and he also mentioned post game on the flight back. That's going to be really important because these guys are already going to be, going through a 3-hour football game, and you definitely got to keep them hydrated because that Atlanta game seems like a long way off from a Friday night, but you got to get them back. You got to get them back healthy and stretched and hydrated. I guess he'd go back to practice on Thursday, so I'll have a few days off, but pregame and postgame, it's going to be important to make sure they're doing okay.
Sure. And I've already been talking to a bunch of players about what they're going to be doing on a 9.5-hour flight. Some pretty fun answers so far. A lot of guys scrambling right now to download the right movies and shows.
What's the longest flight you've ever taken?
JFK to Johannesburg. I think it was around 17 and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this will feel like a little express.
Well, that was
plane.
several years ago. So, not the longest I've done, but it's significant. It's a long time to fly.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to sleep, it's tough to sleep. If you're trying to stay awake, it's tough to stay awake.
So true. Yeah.
I think that's good enough for that, right?
Yeah.
What's your sense of in general? Like, I think some players are not thrilled about this trip. What's your sense of like how the Eagles are handling that?
Well, I was impressed with the level of preparation, organization. Just talking to John yesterday or Monday, I think they're doing everything they can. It's not ideal, and I think especially for the young players, like a lot of the young players haven't. I mean, if you're in a college and you're playing, I guess the conferences are pretty spread out now, so they might have some longer flights, but a lot of these guys have never done anything like this. So I think it makes sense to make everything as normal as possible. Once they get there and get off the plane, just make it as normal a couple days as possible. So guys are thinking about the game and they're not thinking about we're in Brazil or we just got on a long flight because you got to be focused on the Packers. Yeah,
it is funny because some of the most outspoken players against us are obviously veterans who are, Slay in year 12 was like, I don't want to fly to Brazil to play this first game, but those are also the leaders of the team. So at a certain point, I think they, at least in front of their teammates, have to start to just say, hey, this is what it is. We got to prepare to play this game.
Yeah. And Slay was taking that approach yesterday. He's like, there's nothing we can do about it. It's, we got to do it. And complaining doesn't help. Let's go play football.
Longer flight from Green Bay.
It is.
You're invited to the Birds Take Brazil pregame party. Meet NBC Sports Philadelphia experts for a live Q&A all about your Eagles. Celebrate with special guests and giveaways. We'll see you at the Birds Take Brazil pregame party, September 6th, presented by Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL.
Eagles experts and me will be there.
I will not be there.
That's a long trip over to the Xfinity. Boy, that's going to be far.
You'll be able to stay awake for that.
Kind of walk all the way to the other side of the parking lot.
All right.
Stay hydrated.
We have our preseason predictions.
Yeah, we do.
We do this every year. You come up with the categories. I like that you come up with the categories. We'll just get into it. And then at the end of the year, we go through and we see who got closer and we see who wins each thing.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first one on your list, Saquon Barkley scrimmage yards.
And mine are all done, so I have.
Yeah, me too. We
But I'm saying I'm not going to respond to yours and then just.
Okay, yeah, we're not playing the prices right.
No, we're not.
$1, Bob. Saquon Barkley.
Who's that, Bob Barker?
Yeah, Bob Barker. Saquon Barkley scrimmage yards. So rushing and receiving together. Do you want to go first or want me to go first?
It doesn't matter. I went with 1558.
Okay, I'm a little under that. I went 1474.
Okay.
So we're pretty close there. I think over 1500 is certainly possible. With him, I'm kind of factoring maybe he misses a couple of games.
Yeah.
There were 4 running backs over 1500 last year. So I wanted to put him there and then I put him right under it. But I think 1474 would still be a pretty good year, especially if he misses a game or two.
Yeah, and I do think Kenny Gainwell's going to have a pretty significant role. So we'll see how that goes. But I also think Barkley is in a much better situation he's ever been in his life, in his career, with the people around him. So.
Yeah, and some of those other backs are on teams where they don't have a ton of other weapons.
Yeah.
So I think there are going to be some games where Saquon has a quiet day just because it's a big passing day and AJ goes off and Devontae goes off and there's not as much work for Barkley. Number 2, Jalen Hurts rushing plus passing touchdowns. I'll go here. I said 40.
Okay.
Which is a high number. It's higher than he's ever been, but I think the passing numbers are going to come up this year.
I do too. What was he? 22 last year, 23 the year before. I went 38, so we're kind of close on that one. We don't break it down between passing and rushing, but do you have a number in your mind when you did that?
I still think it's going to be a significant amount rushing. And I know that like last year we thought too that maybe it's going to I still think there's going to be 10 plus rushing touchdowns. I just think the passing touchdowns could go up a tick.
Yeah, I went 38, and I'm going to guess like 24 and 14, something like that. So you said 40, I said 38. Number 3.
AJ Brown plus Devontae Smith receiving yards.
I went 25.04. It might be too high, but
I went higher than you.
Oh, did you?
I went 25.49.
Wow, we're close again.
We're very close. These are going to come down to the wire. Or maybe we're both just really wrong.
Well, even if we're both really wrong, we're close. So,
yeah.
I think it might be a little closer than it has been, where AJ might not quite get like the 1480, and Devontae might be a little higher.
Devontae could end up with like 11.5 or 12.
Yeah. There's so many skill guys, and now you have Dotson.
You do, but I don't think they're going to eat into those guys.
I don't either. That's why my number's high.
Yeah, me too. Dallas Goedert touchdowns. I went with 4.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
It's I thought you were. I was hoping that you were going to think this is the Dallas Goedert breakout touchdown season, but we thought that.
When I wrote the question down, I did, and then
were you trying to bait me into that?
No. Okay. It was probably a dumb one to have because I mean, 5's probably too high, 3's too low, so it was going to be 4. All right, but I like the next one though.
Okay, the next two little twists.
Try to get a little creative here.
Yeah, why don't you explain it?
So this is basically 2 categories: sacks and interceptions. 2 different questions where you pick the player. So you're picking the 2 players that you think will have the most sacks and the most interceptions. So instead of saying like Josh Sweat plus Nolan Smith sacks, you pick the players that you think will have the most, and then we'll add them up at the end of the season.
So who wins this?
Whoever's guy has the most combined. Whoever's guys have the most
so we don't have
combined.
to pick a number.
No, you don't, but I did.
Okay, I did too.
Yeah.
I was confused about who wins because
I win.
Whatever makes you win.
However it turns out.
Okay.
I just rationalize.
All right. So I'm fighting a losing game here. This is like I'm playing with a 5-year-old. Says I win. So the top 2 sack guys, who do you have?
I went Jalen Carter and Bryce Huff.
Okay. I went Josh Sweat and Jalen Carter.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
What's your number for those 2?
I went 18.5.
I went 21.
Ooh.
Sacks got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. And
you went with a half.
Same deal. I know. Same deal with interceptions.
I went CJ Gardner-Johnson and Quinyon Mitchell.
Oh, really? We picked 2 different guys.
Oh, okay. Who do you have?
And how many did you put a number down?
7.
I went 7 with Reed Blankenship and Slay.
Okay. I know I had Mitchell before we even got word about him playing, and let's talk about that in a few minutes. But I had him before we even knew that he was kind of new, and I think CJ of the safeties is most likely to have.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I just went with Blankenship. So last year we had Jake Elliott 50-yard field goals, which I think I clinched like in week 3.
Yeah, he takes way too many 50-yard field goals last year.
But I changed it to 55-yard field goals this year.
How many Jake Elliott 55-yard field goals do you have?
I went 3.
I went 2.
Okay. All right, we got a different number there.
My thought is like the offense should be a little better. You're not gonna kick as many.
Okay.
You're gonna hopefully not be stuck in the mud in the middle of the field.
Sure.
Eagles yards per game. I'll go.
And last year, I think they were like 358 for and they were way higher than that before the collapse. But it was a fairly high number for a team that couldn't get a first down.
Exactly. I think they'll be a little better. I went 372.2.
Oh, you went a fraction.
Yeah.
I went 371 even.
Oh, wow. We're really close there.
Yeah. 1.2 yards.
That's good in a way, though, because if it's below that, you win it. If it's above it,
yeah,
I win. The other thing I did try to factor in, I think over the course of a 17-game season, we might see like a small downtake league-wide in yards because of the new kickoff.
Could be.
If every starting position on a kickoff is like 5 yards up
right
over the course of a full season, it's going to add up.
Could be. Now, we're off by 1.2 yards between us.
Now, what if it's 372? That'd be really funny.
Or if it's 371.6 would be tied. Who's going to have that 1.2 yard per game that's going to push you over the top? Anyway, turnover margin was the next one. Just a couple more here.
Yep. What'd you have there?
I went +7.
I went +9.
Okay.
There were a bunch of teams. It was kind of wild. There were a bunch of teams +10 and up last year, and then there was like a big gap.
Yeah.
And then it was like +3.
Yeah.
Eagles were bad last year.
Terrible.
Yeah.
That's got to get a lot better. The last one before the tiebreaker is just Eagles wins.
Went 12.
I went 11.
Okay, good. I think both of those are very much in play.
We're close on all these, but we're not the same on any of them except Goddard touchdowns.
Tiebreaker is Eagles points. And we might need this tiebreaker.
Yeah, we might.
Because we had the same answer for one of them.
What do you
I went 481.
I went 489.
Okay, we're real close on all these. I think
we've been spending too much time together.
We view the team very similarly. Though.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the case. So we're probably both wrong.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, that is the weird thing about this season is that I think they're going to be a good team, but I think there's also a path that it doesn't go well.
Sure. Yeah.
We've been around it now for all of training camp, and I think I've been impressed by what I've seen. The offense, to me, has the potential to be elite. I think the defense has to find some average play, and they'll be okay. And I think having a veteran coordinator and a scheme conducive to that is where they're at right now.
I just think it might take a little while till the defense kind of is able to – so many new pieces, new scheme, new coaches. We'll see. They certainly look good in practice, but it's a different animal.
Did want to talk about Quinyon Mitchell
a
little bit. Vic Fangio basically said this guy's not leaving the field. How did it go down in the press conference?
Yeah, so we had to split up yesterday because the locker room and the coordinators were at the same time. So I was in there with Vic, and he was asked, do you see Quinyon as a guy who will never leave the field, and do you feel like he's ready for that if that's the case? And he just goes, yes and yes. He's the best. There's no other coach on the team that would give that info up and reveal. And we kind of had a hunch. We've talked about this. And my theory was that they were like, he's never played in the slot before. So he needed the work in the slot more than he needed it outside. So you play Keeley and Isaiah outside with Slate kind of taking turns, and Q played outside too. He practiced outside, but I think they just wanted to get him as much work as possible in the slot because the thinking was he's going to start the season off playing the slot and playing. If the team has two receivers, he'll play outside with Slay. And I think they felt like he was okay outside. He just needed to get as much work as possible. And he said it came slowly. He said at first he wasn't super comfortable. We talked to him before practice. But he says he feels comfortable. And that's a lot. That's a lot for a rookie to give a guy both. And I looked it up. The last rookie to play outside and inside on opening day of his rookie year with the Eagles was Eric Allen. It was 36 years ago. 1988, he was a second-round pick. So it's rare. But the kid's really impressive.
Yeah, I think it also speaks to they clearly think they're better off with him inside and Isaiah Rodgers outside, as opposed to Quinyon Mitchell just playing outside and Avonte Maddox
Right.
being the nickel. But it also probably has to do with Avonte kind of being needed at safety right
Yeah,
now.
and he was asked about that. He said Avante's more than ready in the slot, even though he's practiced at safety a lot.
What do you
this
think
summer.
if you were the coach, what do you think is the better option there?
I think Q's got to be on the field every snap.
Yeah, I mean, he would be in that other scenario as well.
Oh, as far as keeping him outside and having Avante in the slot
as the starting nickel.
No, I like this.
Okay.
I think and nothing against Avante. He's a good player, but I like this. And he kind of hinted that when Cooper DeJean is ready, that he could be the slot guy.
And that's kind of what we've said here is I think there's a world where eventually Quinyon just gets to stay outside and Cooper DeJean takes over as a nickel. And I think there was a chance that would have happened to start this season if DeJean was healthy.
Missed a lot of time. It's hard enough as a rookie to have that kind of role. But when you miss a month, I mean, we didn't see him at all till the joint practice, and then he was limited there. Oh, he only did, barely did anything that day. So he's only practiced for a couple weeks. And Vic even said, ideally we'd like to get Quinyon in one spot and keep him there.
Yeah, it's a lot. And like you drafted him to be an outside corner.
Yeah.
You didn't draft him to play the slot.
Right.
He's going to do it a lot, at least to start the season, because you figure they're going to be in nickel 70+%.
Probably about 70%
of the time. So he's going to be out there inside quite a bit. And you have to remember that's not his natural position. So if there are some bumps in the road, like it's not all on him.
Yeah. And I guess the operative question is, when would Cooper DeJean be ready? And like if Isaiah Rodgers is playing at a really high level,
if it's working,
you're not going to make that change. Yeah. So there's a lot to consider, but these are good problems to have. I don't know the last time we sat here talking about they have too many defensive backs.
Yeah, we're talking about all these good options they have. And look, we haven't seen it in practice. So I think that's the caveat here is that we're talking about all these players, but we haven't really seen it yet. You know, we think that they're talented and we think they'll be really good, but we also don't really know.
How certain are you that Quinyon can handle this? What's your level of confidence in him?
Very confident in Quinyon.
Really high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
You know what? Going back to when we started talking about the draft, and he was the guy that it went from me thinking he was an option at 22 to me thinking there's no chance in heck they get this guy.
Yeah.
Because I thought he wowed everyone enough at the Senior Bowl and the Combine to kind of take himself out of that range, and then he falls to them at 22. I've really liked the player since back then, and nothing I saw this summer moved me from that. If anything, it made me feel like a little vindicated in how much I liked him.
He's so good. And I love his mentality, like the physical stuff. And we were talking to him, and I asked him about, this is your first game. He played at Toledo, where their average attendance, I looked it up yesterday, was like 19,000. He played in a couple preseason games, and attendance was probably less than that. I asked him about, you're going to have a wow moment, in a full stadium. I mean, whether it's in Brazil or at the Link or in Green Bay at Lambeau. And he's just looked at me. He's like, no, it's football. I'm ready.
Slade put that well.
Yeah. I don't know. He was basically, to paraphrase, he said he was born ready. I don't want to go beyond that, but he's got such a serious attitude, and he kind of comes across like a veteran when you talk to him. His confidence is through the roof, and he's going to get beat. It's going to happen. It's probably going to happen Friday. But your confidence in him, and we saw that. I mean, we saw AJ would beat him, and then the next snap he'd come back and win the snap. He said he's going to trash talk. He's not backing off from that on Friday. He'll be trash talking those Packers receivers, and I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Me too. I really thought they had a good plan with him this summer. They started off, he was second team outside corner, get your feet wet a little bit. You're not coming out here and being with the first team, but a few days into practice, then all of a sudden he's out there in the dime package a little bit with the first team. All right, you're with the other guys now. All right, now you're the nickel. And now by the end of camp, he's starting outside and bumping in, which is probably going to be his role. I just thought they brought him along the way they needed to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And
I'm sure that was, Vic from the beginning was like, this is the way we're going to do this.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of make him earn every step along the way.
And he did.
What do you expect from the other rookies, though, as we go through their draft? Let's kind of go through it. Cooper DeJean, we kind of talked about, kind of a slow burn early for him.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not even active maybe the first couple of weeks. I think he's pretty behind. I like the player. I just think he might not be quite ready. And we'll see how it goes. I could be wrong, but I have a hunch he might not be up.
Fascinating. I think he'd probably offer enough on special teams to be up.
Could be, yeah.
Maybe not though. Jalix Hunt, the 3rd round pick.
I guess I would think we'd see him on special teams. I think he'll be up.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be up. I think he'll be a big special teamer, and he'll have a very limited role on defense to start, I would think.
Yeah. I'm not sure he'll have one this early, but I mean, Vic said something interesting about BG yesterday. He kind of indicated BG is going to play more than last year, that there's no pitch
BG
count.
To play.
He wants BG out there. BG played well last year when he did play. Not what I expected to hear, but it was something to keep an eye on. Maybe that says more about Nolan Smith than BG.
Yeah. Will Shipley.
Will Shipley, he may have a small role in offense.
I think
Small one, but
probably play special teams. I think he's a good candidate to be a kick returner.
Yeah.
I think we'll see some of him. Anaya Smith, obviously, on IR. Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
I think we'll see a ton of him on teams.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a core special teamer.
Yeah.
They're going to need him to play there. Trevor Keegan.
I wouldn't expect to see a lot of Trevor Keegan.
Yeah, I think he might be down on game days to start.
Could be.
He's only played one position, left guard. You can have 8 up, and they're going to have to bring up a backup center.
Yeah.
So I think he might be down on game days early.
Yeah.
Johnny Wilson?
Johnny Wilson, I don't know.
I think he'll play a little bit.
Could go either way.
I think he'll be the 4th receiver. And he'll kind of be a blocking receiver.
Could be.
And then Dylan McMahon on the practice squad. He could theoretically be elevated. I think they have other options early in the season, whether it's Brett Toth or Nick Gates to elevate.
Yeah. I wished Brett Toth happy birthday yesterday, and his birthday was actually the day before yesterday. So he said, you're only off by 364 days. Never really looked at it that way. But it's possible, and we'll see about, I guess Quinyon is going to be the only one that really has a significant role in offense or defense. I think we'll see Shipley maybe, 8 to 12, maybe 8 snaps, 8 to 10. We don't know how many snaps they'll have. A handful of snaps, maybe a handful of snaps for Jalix.
It was funny. So I've been asking players what they're going to do on the flight.
Yeah.
The rookies are like, we're going to study the game plan. I'm going to watch tape. And all the veterans are like, I got to find a new Netflix show to watch.
Yeah, that's exactly what I heard.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. We have questions coming up on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, Rube, we have a bunch of questions here. If you guys have a question for us, the email address is eagleye@nbcuni.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you have that QR code. You can scan it, send it right from your phone. Let's get into it, huh?
Let's do it.
First one here is from Taki from Seattle. Jack Stoll, Jack Driscoll, Greg Ward, Quez Watkins, Boston Scott, etc. all failed to make another team's 53. Is it ever fair to interpret anything positive or negative from how so many ex-Eagles who have been on the roster for 3+ seasons don't even survive to the final 53 for other teams. For example, positive in the sense that they were able to get production out of guys when other teams can or won't. Negative in the sense that nobody else wants them, even though they're still in their 20s.
Who are the guys you mentioned?
Jack Stoll, Jack Driscoll, Greg Ward, Quez Watkins, Boston Scott.
It's an interesting question. I think for a lot of guys, it's finding the right situation. And
I think it's also important to note that every team has these types of players who are going to be of more value to that team than they are to the rest of the league.
Yeah. And I also think, I mean, every year, how many players get drafted every year? I mean, close to 300, over 250. So you have this influx of young players every year, and guys in that range, and in their late 20s are often the odd man out. I mean, Greg Ward's a different situation. I mean, he hasn't been on the roster on the 53 for a couple of years. Boston didn't really play that much. He's kind of a short yardage guy. Quez, I think, just lost his confidence. I think there was some ability there. I wonder if he'll ever get another chance.
He's back on the practice squad, I believe.
Oh, is he
Pittsburgh?
The Steelers?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I think it's a combination of just how many young players come into the league every year, and they push those guys out of the league, and just being in the right situation is huge. I mean, I'm not.
And Jack Stoll's back here on the practice squad.
Yeah.
After a brief hiatus in North Jersey. He's been hurt, though. He has not practiced.
Right.
Next question
Good to know.
From Douglas, actually two from Douglas. How will or how did, depending when you get this, the X-ban / Twitter impact your ability to do your job, Dave, in Brazil? I've got a few questions about this. I'm not going to try to skirt the Brazilian government. I'll be on Threads, be on Facebook, Instagram. Back here in the States, we'll be tweeting. Be all right. Everything will be fine without Twitter.
Dave will be on CompuServe and Prodigy.
I am glad that I have a Threads account. I'll probably use that for, game day tweeting, and
it's not tweeting if it's on Threads.
Game day
threading,
posting,
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Twitter's not Twitter anymore either. So
true.
Yeah. Next question from.
But we still call it tweeting, though. Is it not really tweeting anymore because it's not Twitter? It's because tweet is not a form of the word Twitter. So I think it's still tweeting. But on Threads, maybe it's tweeting on Threads. I'll shut up now. Dave's giving me that look. When's he going to stop? Anyway. Next question from Doug.
Do you think they will use Johnny Wilson as the third tight end and 3 tight end sets? Is that the reason they only kept 2? Or do you see a more roster fluidity in that position?
He's not a tight end. He's a good blocker. He's tall. He's a wide receiver.
Yeah, he hasn't worked with the tight ends. So, I understand the question. You could think, yeah, maybe he could do that, but he hasn't. And the Eagles don't view him as a tight end. So I think he will have a role as a blocker, but as a receiver. As far as a third tight end, they'll elevate somebody for this game. Jack Stoll doesn't appear ready. He hasn't practiced. So my guess is EJ Jenkins.
It would make the most sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think they will elevate a tight end, though. We've talked about this. You're not running 13 personnel a ton, but you want to have that
you want to be
in
able
your
to.
bag.
Yeah.
You don't want to eliminate personnel packages.
Yeah.
Next question from Scott. Wanted to ask Dave what he worries about most with traveling to Brazil and how it will affect your Twitter coverage if Brazil shuts it down. We did the Twitter thing already. I'm not super worried about the travel. The logistics kind of swirl in your head, and you get I have normal pre-big trip nervousness. But as far as I think a lot of the stuff we've heard about Brazil and this trip have kind of been overdone, overhyped. I'm not worried about a dangerous city. I'm going to be smart and try to not do anything that makes me stick out in a bad way. And I don't know. I've been to other cities before in foreign countries. You just kind of keep a low profile and common sense. Yeah. And I am excited though. I'm excited to experience the culture a little bit. Excited to see the city.
How many countries will this be that you've been in? Do you have any idea?
Oh, I don't know offhand.
We'll look for that list. Maybe
this will be my third time to South America.
Okay. Where have you been?
I've been to Peru, Argentina, and Uruguay.
Not Paraguay.
No, Uruguay. So looking forward to it. I do not speak Portuguese at all.
I'm looking forward to being downstairs in this building in the studio. Pre-game, post-game.
As you should. Next question from Jason. Who's the player that will surprise us most in a good way this year?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. A little tricky because we don't know everyone's expectations for every player.
That's true. I think there are general kind of expectations. You have anybody in mind?
Surprise us in a good way. I don't know because I'm trying to think if I should go like a lower level player, like a reserve who's going to play a little bit.
Right. Like I'm thinking like Gainwell. I think he's going to play more than people anticipate with Saquon. I think they're going to be smart about spreading that around a little bit. I think a guy like Jalix Hunt might surprise some people.
That's a good one.
I think he's
looked way more advanced than I expected.
Way ahead of where I think they thought he'd be, and certainly where I thought he'd be. So I'll go with Jalix.
I'd go into Kobe Dean. I think he's going to play. I don't know how you keep him off the field if he's your best linebacker.
I agree.
So, and it's been a rough couple of years for him to start his career. So I think he has the chance to be a pretty good player this year.
Still a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
Younger than Quinyon.
He is. Next question from Devin. Hello, Dave and Rube. I live in capital city Baku in Azerbaijan and love American football. I started watching football when Peyton Manning was throwing touchdowns. I started following the Eagles because I raised golden eagles from young to hunt rabbits. My question is for Rube. I know you have said many times you love to hear guided by voices. If you like them, I'm sure you've listened to Shagragar Imanov as well. Do you know Shagragar Imanov?
I'm not familiar with Shagragar's groove. No, I don't know, but I will.
I'll slack you this name. You can check out Shagragar Imanov. Okay.
Sounds good.
Do you think Devin is a real person or am I getting duped?
You're getting duped.
Okay.
There's no such.
Last question here from Rich. Long-time listener since Rube knows. Really enjoy the show. Dave, safe travels to Brazil. Thank you. My question is more of a general media question. When you get to talk to players / coaches / staff after practices, games, media availabilities, how much of what is said to you do you find to be relevant and useful information versus what is fluff, coach speak, or kept close to the vest for a competitive advantage? How much do you end up using in your stories and for the podcast? That's
a really interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
I would say everything Vic says I find useful and nothing Nick says I find useful. Locker room. Yeah, it really varies because like sometimes you'll do an interview and there's just, some players are better at it than others. There's some players like when you talk to Kelsey, like everything he says is fascinating. And that's why, so many of us gravitated toward him when he was here. But there's still guys like that.
And sometimes I think what you're trying to accomplish in the locker room differs. So sometimes you go in there and I'm working on a story about
a specific thing,
the nickel position. I want to talk to all the guys who play nickel. You're going to use it no matter, you might paraphrase some of it if it's not good to quote. But then there's other days where you're talking to Lane Johnson and he says something interesting and it kind of clicks something in you and you keep asking him about it and you end up with a story you didn't anticipate having.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Especially with us. I think we're in a little different situation, whereas like sometimes we'll have a camera with us and I kind of view my job in that moment is like to get sound that we can use for TV. And it might be different. Like I might want to ask Lane Johnson about playing next to Mekhi Becton, but I know our TV audience or our TV show might want to hear him talking about his career or something else. So I think in that respect, sometimes we have a different job than the guys who are just like purely writing.
Yeah, that's true. I think in all honesty, I think everything that I hear from a player or a coach, I find useful to some extent in some way. Out of all the stuff we hear in the locker room, how much actually gets into print quote unquote, it's probably like 10%, maybe a little higher.
Probably a little higher than that.
But I mean, my favorite times, and this is why like I'm just so happy we're back in the locker room. This is our first week in the locker room, is just getting to know guys. Just talking to Tanner McKee about how his piano lessons are coming.
Yeah, and I think it's stuff that I think fans might not think about, is like we're building those relationships. So when, James Bradbury gets called for a hold in the Super Bowl, he feels comfortable talking to us.
Yeah. But good question.
Yeah.
We always get good questions doing this segment.
We do. And if you have one, you can send it to eagleeye@nbcuni.com. That's all I had today, Rube. Do you have anything else on your mind?
No, have a safe trip, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, we're going to try to pull off a pod while I'm in Sao Paulo. The scheduling is going to make it a little tough to figure out exactly when it will drop, but we'll figure out a time. We'll make it work. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll talk to you guys later in the week. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Any final words, Rube?
There will be a post-game podcast. We just don't know how far post-game it'll be, but there will be one.
There will be a pod after the game eventually.
Like when you wake up on Saturday, most likely there'll be a pod. Maybe not.
I don't know. We've got to figure out some of the
soon after.
Sleep in Saturday.
Yeah, sleep till noon.
All right, that's all we have on Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.